Gospels in the New Testament. Okay, something more on that or something else? Yes?
I want to ask concerning the original information, as you call them, the Gospels. I've had some time that as most of these original texts were doctored, and the original information is not what we have. Can you clarify that?
Okay. So the question is about the, you can say that the transmission of the text, that some people say that the texts have been changed during history. That is, yeah, that is an important question. No, and this is important to get hold of. No texts from antiquity have survived in their original. No texts from antiquity have survived in their original. We only have copies of the original. That is so with the Gospels in the New Testament, but that is so with texts of Plato, or Tacitus, or Josephus, and with anyone else. That is just the fact that the material they were writing on has not survived for 2,000 years of use, and therefore it had to be copied. There were no printing machines, no Xerox, so you had to copy it by handwriting. That was a trade, so people were trained to do that. That was a business during antiquity, that you could copy texts, and of course you were then supposed to copy them exactly as you could. The interesting thing is, when we today want to check out how reliable is the copies we have, there are two criteria that historians use. Firstly, you look at how long is the time span between the original and the oldest copy we have. The shorter time span, the better. The longer, more can have been changed in the text. The second criteria is, how many different copies do we have that we can compare and see, are there any changes or are they similar? And the more copies we have, the better it is, because then we have more to see, have they changed? Have they been tampered with? Now, the general picture with texts from antiquity is that you have a time span between the original and the oldest copy we have, and that is about 7, 8, 9, 1,000 years. When it comes to the New Testament, it's 300 years for the whole New Testament, all 27 books. And it's like 30 years if you take the oldest fragment, which is a fragment from the Gospel of John, just 30 years. So the New Testament is much, much closer in time when we compare the oldest copies to the original than any other of the, or it's closer in time than most of the other texts. Secondly, if you take the number of copies where we can compare, the general picture is that you have between 1 and 10 copies. But when it comes to the New Testament, you have more than 5,000 copies where you can compare. And the result of this is that it is generally agreed that the New Testament's text is better attested, is better confirmed in its accuracy than any other text from antiquity. So it has not been changed. We can, to 98%, establish exactly what stood in the original. There are some few places where there are discussion, but nothing which affects anything of the Christian message.
suomeksi, että saadaan kielenkäytölläkin vähän hommia. Mitä sä sanoisit sellaiselle henkilölle, joka ajattelee, että tiede on niinku este hänen uskolleen niinku Kristukseen?
What would you say to a person that thinks that science is a hinder for believing in Jesus?
Okay. Of course, I would like to know what within science is a problem in relationship to Jesus. So I would like to have maybe the question more specific. But in Sweden, with that kind of question, it's often that people think that science has made it impossible to believe in miracles, like in healing of the sick and raising of the dead. And then my answer is that is a total misunderstanding of science. Science has not excluded the supernatural. Absolutely not. What science can do is to help us to understand the natural world, nature, and investigate into how nature works, what nature is, and so on. But science can never say anything about the supernatural. And science has not excluded God or the supernatural. It just gives us information about nature. And of course, within nature, a dead person cannot come back to life. And Christianity is not saying anything such stupid thing as within nature, a dead person comes back. No, Christianity says there is a God who created nature and is sovereign over nature. And this God has acted into the nature he himself has created, and he rose Jesus from the dead. That was a supernatural action. And nothing within science contradicts that. So I think that is a huge misunderstanding to create a conflict between natural science and, for example, belief in the supernatural. Yes?
I was wondering, do you guys, if you research stuff like this, do you have material about Jesus in kind of official papers, like in court and stuff, if he was convicted to death? Or is it just the gospel things? Do you have any other kind of documents?
There are no court documents from the trial. And the oldest sources we have about Jesus is Paul's letter and then the Gospels. So it's the New Testament material. And as I mentioned in my lecture, this is not a surprise since all archives in Jerusalem was destroyed AD 70 when the Romans just destroyed the whole city. So it's not to expect any documents. And of course most documents also from Rome has disappeared. There is actually an early reference in one of the church fathers that he refers to some documents in Rome. There's some discussion about how we should interpret that, but one interpretation is that at that time there was actually some court material about Jesus. But like most material from courts from antiquity, that is destroyed, so we do not have access to it today.
But there was material before.
Yeah, that is. This is one thing that historians, they do not deny that Jesus lived, and secondly, they do not deny that Jesus was executed by crucifixion. That is undisputed, his death. And of course, then there must have been documents because it was an official trial. Pontius Pilate, the Roman official, was the one who sentenced Jesus to death. So that is generally assumed that some kind of reports about this must have been there originally, but we don't have access to it. Yes?
I just wanted to say something to address what she said. I was in India some years back, and I asked one of the Christians that, how did you people come in contact with Christ? How did you get to become Christians? Because about 90% of the population are Hindus. And he said that his grandfather was among the priestly families. And they have this book that guides Hindus. It's called Veda or something like that. And it was in that book that I came across Christ, Jesus Christ. And he became Christian, his family became a Christian, without any contact with American preachers or British preachers. And that was really, really fascinating to me as someone. It encouraged me that even in the Hindu faith, they have Jesus, and even though they believe in millions of gods and spirits, it was unique. What he talked about Jesus was actually unique, and that the priest and whatever lineage decided to sideline it and talk about some other things just to control people.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, for sure, Americans are latecomers in the Christian church. So the gospel message was there for a long time before that. I'm not sure you would find anything about Jesus Christ in Hindu Vedic text, so I would actually question that. There is, of course, a lot about Krishna, but that is referring to totally other figure. Now, in India, there has all the way back to the 1st century been a Christian church, and there is an old tradition about the Apostle Thomas traveling to India and preaching the gospel and establishing the Christian church. So I would guess that it's the person you met who became a Christian, that he had some information basically from the Christian church that has been established in India since the 1st century, and that there must be some connection to that for him understanding who Christ was, who Christ is. Okay, anything more? Any more questions?
Yes.
Sorry, yeah?
Please shed more light on the inspiration of this original text, the gospel, and of that, and the recitation. How do these relate? The inspiration and then giving the disciples of Christ, the man. We know, as he said, that the disciples, they were to recite, memorize this information. But we also know that historical documents in the Gospels you mentioned they were inspired. Would you like to share?
Okay. I would like them to. This is a kind of intra-Christian question about the inspiration, which is of course a theological concept about the belief that God has communicated to humankind through human writers. I would like to underline that what I presented here today is not built on any doctrine of inspiration, but it's built just on a historical investigation into the source material we have. And for me, it's very important to